Good morning. I think we are live now. It's a beautiful Saturday morning here, and it's the last day of Canadian Infertility Awareness Week. And once again, we'd like to thank Fertility Matters Canada for inviting us to have a chat with everybody out there as they close out all of the great events that they've put on throughout the week. So last Sunday, we joined you guys and we talked about infertility and kind of coping through infertility. And today we are going to talk about two hot topics with our My Mind Body Baby community. And that is the impact of infertility on your career, both in coping in the workplace day to day and advancing your career as you deal with infertility. And then your relationships, so both your intimate relationships and your platonic, like friendships and relationships with your family. So I am Lindsay from My Mind Body Baby, one of the co-founders, and I will pass it over to Michelle.
Hey everyone, it's Michelle. I am the resident nutritionist here at My Mind Body Baby, and Lindsay and I joined forces together about 2 years ago to bring our experience, our passion for fitness and nutrition and mental health, and our understanding, or deep understanding of the world of infertility, to help support as many people as we can along their journey. So like Lindsay said, we wanted to chat with you about career and relationships, which are two topics that we get a lot of questions about. So we'll sort of jump in, and I guess I'll start. Lindsay and I have two very different perspectives on career and infertility. I am and have been self-employed my entire working life. As a nutritionist, I own my own business. I was my everything. I was the accountant, I was a nutritionist, I was the marketer. I did every aspect of my business. And for me, when things started to get busy with infertility treatments, I didn't realize how busy I would actually be with them. And, between trying to manage the needs of my clients and just my personal work ethic and my love of my business, I really tried to do everything. And I found at some point during that journey that I just really couldn't do it all anymore. And I had a burnout, and we ended up having to take a break from treatments because I just found it all to be far too much. And so it hit me one day, and we had just gone through IVF, and I got a call from, I'll back up. We just finished IVF, and we found out we were pregnant from IVF, and I ended up getting a call after one of my beta tests, and the clinic had told me that my numbers were not increasing the way they had hoped they would be. They were too low, and that I was to probably expect a miscarriage. And I got this around 12 or 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and I had a full afternoon of patients still booked. And I ended up going into the office and seeing about 5 or 6 different people that afternoon, and got home, and my husband looks at me and he's like, "Are you insane? Like, why would you go in there?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I was on autopilot, and I just didn't want to let people down, and I had so much work to do." And he's like, "That's like, you need to like pause." And so that really hit me as a lesson that, I was trying to be everything to everybody and try to do everything and not let infertility like affect my career, because it was already affecting my personal life so much. And so I took a couple lessons away from that situation. One being that if I were to do it differently, I probably would need to scale back. So anybody here who is self-employed, of course, every situation is different, and not everybody's able to do this, but highly recommend scaling back with your clients or patients or whatever you have during treatments or during certain times of your cycle, just because sometimes it gets very busy with appointments, and it's sort of unpredictable at times, so you're not really sure what to expect. Or maybe you could plan your treatments to be at a certain downtime of the year. And I know that for some people, including myself, that would be really tough because you would feel like you're sort of putting things on hold because of work, and you would feel like left behind, or like it's going to take even longer for me to get pregnant. But I really do feel like, you have to find some sort of strategy, plan in advance for what's coming up, because if you're listening, you're probably in this world already, and you realize how busy it can be and how intense. And don't let yourself burn out like I did, because it will happen. So like I said, definitely try to ask for help. So whether that means you're hiring somebody, or you're scaling back on your business for the short term, or you're planning for it in the future in terms of downtimes within the business, I think those are key strategies that I wish I sort of would have taken away or would have known prior to, getting started with my journey.
I'm going to read you a quote from some research, and this is research in the Journal of Reproduction and Infertility. And this research looked at the impact of infertility on a woman's career. And it says, infertility has the potential to impact every area of a female's life. The emotional impact that infertility may have on a woman, in addition to the physical and time constraints involved in pursuing fertility treatments, frequently resulted in decreased occupational engagement and fulfillment of roles as a spouse or friend. Those experiencing infertility need more resources and support to navigate their journey. And that's really where the career and relationships come in, because your career plays such a significant role in your life, whether it's purely just a source of income and you need that to survive, or you find that it gives you a sense of accomplishment and a challenge throughout your day. In any scenario, it's an important part of your life, and you spend a significant amount of time doing it. And like Michelle said, when the treatments take up so much of your time and take up so much of your physical, mental, emotional resources, it's going to have a big impact both on you in the workplace and your relationship with coworkers, with your friends, with your family. And so finding options that are going to make things as easy for you as possible, I think, is one way that you can help yourself through this journey. And you don't know what you don't know. And the first time that we went through IVF, we didn't tell anybody at work what we were going through. We had our close family who knew what we were going through, and they were a wonderful support for us. And we each had some friends that we could lean on. But it's different when you go into work and nobody understands what you're going through. Maybe you have an outburst in a meeting, or you're late one day because there was a wait in the waiting room, and there's nobody there who understands what you're going through, and they just think something is off with you. And so the second time we went through IVF, I had actually I bumped into a coworker in the waiting room, and so I realized there was somebody else at my workplace who knew what we were going through. And I told my manager what we were going on. And those two things made it a lot easier on me, because I had somebody who understood what I was going through, and I could talk to them if I needed to. And my manager understood what I was going through. And you might have the option to talk to your manager, or if you're not comfortable with your manager, maybe somebody in HR. And they might be able to help restructure things, or adjust your day-to-day, or at least be more flexible and understanding when appointments and things come up. Michelle mentioned that we had very different careers up until we launched My Mind Body Baby. And mine was very much in the corporate world. I worked for a large organization. And so the support that you can get in that type of organization is different than the support that you might be looking for if you are in a smaller company or you own your own business. Another thing that I found made our journey easier was we had the luxury of a number of different fertility clinics around us geographically, and I was able to pick one that was very, very close to my office. And so on the weekends, it was a little bit farther from home, but the majority of my days I was at work. And so being able to go right from the clinic with a 2-minute drive to the office just made things a little less stressful, because I didn't have that burden of always showing up late to work. So if there are options to make things easier for you, look for them, because it's just going to smooth the road a little bit more. And I mentioned there's sort of two elements of managing your career while dealing with infertility. And one is just coping day to day. And sometimes during this journey, it's just purely about survival. Like, what are you going to do to get through this day and on to the next? And there's another part of your career, which is, should you be advancing your career right now? For people who advancing their career and driving forward has always been a part of who they are and what motivates them at work, it can be difficult to determine if this is a time where I should be purely focusing on me and our journey to grow our family, or if I can allocate some of my personal resources to advancing my career. And it's a personal decision. We have two articles that we wrote that a lot of people have leaned on. And in the Advancing Your Career During Infertility, we have worked with some experts on helping you understand what makes sense for you. So is advancing your career giving you something positive to focus on, that you can put aside the infertility part of your life and focus on something positive and meaningful to you? Or is it depleting your resources and it's not the time to do that right now, and the time is to focus on your journey? And so it's a very personal decision. There isn't a right answer, but there are some questions and exploratory discussion that you can read in the article on our website to help you understand what might work best for you as you navigate this very bumpy road.
Yeah, and I don't know about you, Lindsay, but for me, the work ended up becoming more of a burden. I felt like I love my work, but it was too much at the same time. And I'm not sure if you felt differently or if you felt similar.
At times, it was all too much. You escape to a bathroom to cry, or you book a conference room to get that 2 p.m. call about your blood work, and it was too much. And at other times, I'd be working on a really exciting project and I wanted to see it through. And I remember before we did our last embryo transfer, I'd been working on this big project and I had the opportunity to travel to one of our offices in Switzerland, and I really wanted the timing to work out. I mean, I didn't want anything to compromise this embryo transfer, but I was passionate about this project. I had put everything into it, and I spoke to my manager and I spoke to our doctors and I said, here are the two really important things going on in my life. Is there a way that they can work? And it could, and being able to go on that trip and present this project provided me with something positive to focus on. I felt really good about it. And then when we got home, I could focus on the embryo transfer, which resulted in our son. So to me, that worked at that time, but there were certainly parts of the journey where everything was too much. Work was too much. Everything was too much at once. So, there's going to be kind of highs and lows through your journey, and being honest with yourself and knowing what's going to work for you and what you can handle is important. And I think then that kind of touches on the relationship side of things too, both with your partner and with your friends. And, when everything gets too much, it's great to have that support network around you. And there are some people who are very, very open about their journey. And in some ways, I'm sure that makes things easier because they can be honest when they're having a really hard day or they need to reach out to somebody. But if you haven't completely opened up about your journey, having those close people that you can talk to are important. But something Michelle and I have talked a lot about is, if you haven't been down this road, it's hard to know how to support somebody who is going through what you're going through. And it is only to your benefit if you can communicate to those trying to support you what you need. So do you need help figuring out a decision? Are you struggling with whether or not we should do PGS? Well, maybe somebody can help you research it if that's what you need right now. Or do you just need somebody to be there and to say, this is really, really hard. Do you just want to go for a walk? And being able to tell people what you need will help them in supporting you, because they can only guess and do their best, and what they think might work for them might not be what you need at the time. And if you can let them know what would be helpful, then they will be there for you.
Yeah, I found during my experience that as much as my circle tried to support me, I ended up feeling a lot of resentment and anger, frustration that, I wasn't getting the text messages or the calls that I thought I would. Mind you, I didn't communicate that I wanted those things, or that I was maybe even going through a particular, treatment that I needed a little bit more extra support. But I ended up pulling away from people, or just being a little bit angry because I felt like I wasn't getting the support that I wanted, even though I hadn't communicated that to people. So I think it's important that if you need to be able to ask for what you need at the time. Otherwise, like Lindsay said, you don't know what you don't know. And I never would have thought that the infertility journey would have been as challenging as it was. I'm a strong person, pretty resilient, and I struggled. So I feel like it's really important that you reach out to those people in your circle. And if it's not everybody, maybe find one person. And I highly recommend, and I think I said this last week, that you find that one person that really truly gets it. And Lindsay was that person for me. And I said this last week as well, that, I knew that she had gone through the part of the journey. So I reached out to her just to get some, questions answered. And we ended up bonding and now, of course, forming a business out of it, but a relationship that I felt truly was something that she could understand every facet of the emotions that I was going through. And I found that so valuable. And we also mentioned last time that there are companies that will, pair up mentors and mentees if you don't have someone that who is going through the process. So one particular company that we really love is Fruitful Fertility. So they're a wonderful resource. And another resource would be Facebook groups that have people that are going through the journey that can maybe support you as well. We have one, it's called Infertility Support, Nutrition, Fitness, and Mental Health. And it's a group of women that are going through or have gone through the infertility process and can relate or answer questions, or you can vent, or whatever that situation is, to get those feelings out into the open, because sometimes that is really all it takes. And then I also wanted to bring up one more resource for you, which is a recent article that we wrote on our website. You can access it. It's called A Letter to the Woman Trying to Have a Baby. And this was an account, this is sort of my take on what I thought were weird feelings I was having at the time. But then in retrospect, I look back and realize, those things are very, very normal and valid. And so there are some resources in there, and also advice and tips. So if there's something that you think maybe that would help, you could get onto the website and check that out as well.
And it looks like we have a question. Can you link the questions from the website on career burden and balancing? And I think this question is asking how do you manage both your job, going to the infertility clinic, and your career at the same time. And then I think that really goes back to understanding what is going to work for you. If you are at the point in your journey where career is really a burden and you need to go there because you need to maintain your job, but the infertility part of your life is taking over your mental, physical, emotional resources, then trying to figure out some different options that can help ease the burden at work might help. So you could speak to your manager. You could determine if there is somebody else who could take over certain areas of a project. You could speak to HR. Some companies have the opportunity for you to take a leave of absence during this time, a medical leave of absence if you need to. I know some people use vacation time, and when they're going to be proceeding with an IVF, or they've just done an IUI and they want those 2 weeks while they're waiting for their pregnancy test at home so they can just focus on their health and mental well-being, that's worked for them. So whether you need to do it as vacation time or you're able to take some type of leave, if you can work from home some days that either you have an important appointment or you're waiting for a phone call, that's an option too. I remember getting the results of beta tests standing by the photocopier, and I wasn't expecting the call at that time. You know, they usually call at about 2, and it was 11, and I wasn't prepared for it, and the results weren't good, and it's just like a punch to your stomach, and you're in the midst of all of your coworkers. So you know, if you can be home for that type of call, or at the very least book yourself into a side room and be able to take calls like that, sometimes at least that can ease the mental strain of things, so you're not you know, surrounded by people looking at you as you receive this call. The first article that we've written, Managing Your or Coping in the Workplace During Infertility, helps you to understand what type of coping style works best for you. And, you know, at some points we said it's just about survival, and you need to utilize coping skills to get through it. And so this article takes you through the 3 different types of coping styles and helps you to think of some tactics in advance, so that you're not standing at the photocopier when your beta results come in, or that you're not in a meeting and all of a sudden you're kind of overcome with things. And so it doesn't make things perfect, but at least it gives you some tools in your toolbox to help manage both of those very significant demands in your life. There's another question that it looks like has come in. I'm not sure if that answered the question who posed it on career burdening and balancing. If there's more, please ask away. Can you share support groups, please? I'd love to find someone who's been through a similar diagnosis. I think between us and Fertility Matters Canada, we can answer that one. There's a ton of different support groups available. Michelle mentioned our private Facebook group that connects women who are struggling, and they lean on each other, they ask questions, and they're there for one another, and it's completely private, and nobody can see that you've joined it if you don't want them to. Fertility Matters Canada has a number of support groups, local ones that meet, and probably right now they're meeting virtually, but I think Fertility Matters Canada can also help share some options based on where you are geographically. Oh yeah, they've said find a support group in your area, so there's a link there if anybody else is looking for that as well.
Lindsay, I wanted to mention too that the company I mentioned, Fruitful Fertility, they do pair people up based on diagnosis. So that would be something that if you're looking for someone who's got the exact same, as much as possible, issue as you do, you can specifically ask for someone who's gone through that same path.
Yeah, and they really try to, they have a algorithm that really tries to pair you up with somebody who will get what you're going through because they've gone through something very, very similar. So they're a great resource as well. Another question that we've had come through our community on career and infertility is, should I try to look for a clinic that's close to my home or the office, or, you know, what type of criteria should I look for if I have the option of multiple different clinics? And so I mentioned, for me, it helped to have it right by the office. Depending on what type of work you do, picking a clinic, if you have the option of multiple clinics, that is going to ease your day-to-day. It can only make it smoother for you. So if you are in a workplace where you go in every day, picking one that's close to you can help. If you are on the road a lot, then maybe one closer to your home might help. But at points in your journey, you're going to be going to the clinic very, very regularly. And so geographically, if you can make things easier on you, then why not? Let's see. What if your job isn't supportive in a way that allows you to go to all the appointments you need to do? That is very, very difficult. You can talk to your doctor. I know they usually have a standard, okay, you're going to call on day 1 of your cycle, you go in on day 3, you go in again on day 9, 10, depending on your cycle, and then every day or every other day until you ovulate. During cycle monitoring, it's going to change based on the type of treatment you're going through. But if you are struggling with your work and being able to physically get to appointments, talk to your doctor about it, because sometimes you don't need to go in on day 3. You can go in on day 2, and if that's a Sunday, that might be easier for you. Or you might be able to go in on day 4, or you might be able to do some of your lab work elsewhere or out of clinic hours. And sometimes you don't need to even be there physically if it's not for like an ultrasound or blood work. If it's an appointment to go through results, maybe you can do it over the phone or through Zoom or any of the great technological options that are available now. And that might make things easier too. So if you're struggling and you can't talk to anybody at work or they're not supportive of your journey, talk to your clinic and your nurse and your doctor or any of the support people there and see to what extent things can be adjusted to make things work with your schedule.
Sorry, I meant to add in that I think that that's a key point, is just speaking up, because sometimes we think like, oh, my doctor's saying this and so I have to do that. But it's not always the case where you have to follow the exact same schedule. There is some flexibility at points. And so I think that speaking up and letting them know where you're challenged, you might find that, they can find a roundabout way for you.
And we have another question regarding partner support. Is there a good way to get your partner to be more involved? I've told my husband that he needs to learn more so that I can feel supported. Is there a resource for male partners? Male infertility, and actually our Instagram post today quoted some research on male infertility. And while awareness for infertility in general has come such a significant way in the past couple of years, it's still more predominantly focused on females than males. And I know because we've received a number of different comments and feedback on this, that males are looking for support. And there are some support groups out there for males struggling with infertility. I think if anybody is there on Fertility Matters Canada right now, I believe we have some resources that can be shared on male infertility. There are some great social media accounts online that provide research and some anecdotal information on male infertility that can help. And then your husband or your partner the best, and there's going to be some things that they really gravitate towards in terms of finding information, or maybe they're really into cooking and you can say, can you help find us recipes that are going to support our fertility health? Or can you be the one that drives to appointments because I don't want to be crying and driving at the same time? So if there are ways that your partner has shown strengths in the past, leveraging those might be easier for them to show that they're involved in the process. And people deal with things differently. Men and women deal with things differently, and just from person to person it deals with things differently. And some partners, male or female, internalize things a little bit more. But trying to be open and honest and explain what you're feeling can only help your partner or your friends, your family members to understand what you need. So if you say to your partner, I need you to be more supportive, or I need you to take this part on, or I need you to do this, they might not realize that that's something that's going to help you.
Yeah, I remember at times during our journey that I just wasn't feeling, that support from my husband. And so this morning I said to him, if you were going to give advice to anybody on relationships, like married relationships or partner relationships, what could I say to, you guys today about it? And he was like, my husband's very like he doesn't have any emotion, essentially. So he's like, honestly, he's like, I didn't know what to do, because for you, it was all about you. Like you had to go to the appointments, you had to do the injections, you had to have the treatment, you had to have the blood work. Like, he's like, I didn't do anything because I didn't know what to do. And I think that was fair, because it goes back to what I was saying. I really didn't communicate my needs at the time because I wasn't informed enough. I just was trying to plow through the process and get it over with. And I wasn't taking a minute to sort of stop and smell the roses, so to speak, and find that support that I needed outside of my relationship with Lindsay. So, I mean, as much as I was resentful of him at the time, it was fair because I hadn't communicated that I would, I would like him to come to more appointments with me and sit there while I was sitting there, and also, support me through that, or, whatever, maybe he could make more meals. I didn't ask. So I think that's important to to state that, you know, if you want to build that relationship with your partner through the journey, often connecting by explaining what you need, they probably will step up to the plate.
And some people find they can't do injections on their own to
Mm-hmm.
help with that. And not only does it help them because they don't want to do the injections, but their partner feels like they're involved, at least in the process. I needed to do the injections myself, but I wanted him present while I did them. And, you know, at least it felt like we were in it together if he was there supporting me while we were going through it. So again, just figuring out what's going to work for you and communicating it, because people can't read your mind.
Yes, I agree.
Fertility Matters Canada said there's males only support group. They can talk to other men who are struggling and be able to allow them to vent in a safe place. So they've provided the link there. If anybody else has a similar question, you can join that and share that. Somebody said, yes, I'm still trying to figure out my own needs. And it's really hard. You don't always know what's going to help you until maybe somebody does it for you or you've gone through things. And kind of it's trial and error too. So exploring different options, asking your partner to come to appointments if that helps. I know sometimes my husband couldn't physically be there. His office was significantly farther away from our clinic, but he would FaceTime in. I think my doctor thought that was a bit strange at times, but he wanted to be there and to hear firsthand and be able to ask questions, and he couldn't always be there physically. So he was there on the phone and FaceTiming in for some of those appointments. Not sure if there are any other questions at this point. I don't think so. I know there is another great event coming up in half an hour through the Fertility Matters Facebook page, a yoga session. So that gives everybody time to go and get into their yoga gear and join back in half an hour. But thank you. Somebody else just asked a question before we go. This one is through Zoom. How did you manage? Where did it go?
I can't find. How did you manage relationships with your clients when you had to cancel last minute? What did you tell them? That might be related to me. Honestly, very, very frank, I did not cancel ever. That was my problem. The morning I ended up, after what I thought was a miscarriage, ended up with an ectopic pregnancy. And Lindsay, you might have to take over here in a second. Ended up with an ectopic pregnancy, and it was the most painful thing I've ever gone through in my entire life. And I actually ended up being rushed to the hospital for emergency surgery. But even in that pain, I sat through 2 clients. And I later wrote about it, and these particular clients ended up reading the blog about how I was rushed into surgery, and I had almost died that day. And they're like, oh my God, we couldn't even tell that you were in pain. And so I just really pushed through it. And I think that's wrong. I think, obviously, if you're in that much pain, you should not be with clients. But in terms of last minute cancellations, be honest. I mean, there's nobody out there. There's no client out there who's going to fault you for a reason, canceling because of a health reason. And, if they are, then I don't know if they're the right client for you. Lindsay, could you take off over?
Yeah.
Thank you.
If you're not open or honest about your journey, and I wasn't telling everybody what was going on either, you could say something as brief as, there's a health emergency right now. I know somebody who tells people they have diarrhea, and that just usually ends the conversation because nobody wants to ask anymore. But just saying, there's something going on personally, and I'm going to have to reschedule the appointment. I'm sorry. Everybody's human, and they have had their own health emergencies at times too. So you have to put yourself first during this journey. It is a time about you, and you're focusing on a very specific goal, and it's not going to benefit you, as Michelle said, to try to push through. You're not being there 100% for your client at that time, and you're certainly not doing any benefit to yourself and your health during that.
You live and you learn.
Yes. Okay, I think that is all the questions now. Did one just pop up again on the bottom, Michelle?
No, it just said thank you. You're welcome.
Okay. Okay, well, thank you, everybody. As Michelle mentioned, there are 3 different articles really that touch on relationships and career, 2 different ones on career, both coping day-to-day in the workplace, and then, whether you should be advancing your career. So we have those available anytime. If you want to head over to our website, mymindbodybaby.com, and go to blog, and you can find those articles there. You can always email us at hello@mymindbodybaby.com or direct message us through any of our social media channels. And then Fertility Matters Canada has a ton of great resources too. You can always message them and they'll provide the links or the support groups or whatever you need. So I hope that everybody has a wonderful day, that they have taken a lot of information from Canadian Infertility Awareness Week, and that you join in and enjoy this yoga session coming up in 23 minutes. So we will talk to you guys at another time.